Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Forgive me if I sound off. I've been homesick for a while, and talking is difficult. I will do my best to muddle through. I actually finished this book early last week, but since I couldn't speak, and even now I'm a bit dubious about how long I'll be able to. So, like a company who's made record profits in the last year explaining why they're not going to give their employees a raise, I'll try to keep it brief. Obligatory ad. If you like my videos, please try my books. They're cheap and about stuff I find amusing, like people beating each other up professionally and farming in a city after everyone else is dead. Links are in the description. On to the review of Skyshade, the third book in the Lightlark saga. Yet another contender for names of books and people that make the red squiggly lines appear under the words in my scripts. Let's start with the story. We pick up with the war that ended the last book and the exciting confrontation between broody love interest Grimm and the main character Isla, and the conclusion over who she's going to kill because some weird old woman called an oracle said that she would. For some reason I got the impression that Grimm was close to death, and I had real hope something of consequence was about to happen. Maybe something interesting was just about to happen, and a difficult choice was about to be made. Never mind. Time inexplicably moves forward, and now Isla is living with Grimm as his wife. I'm sure if I dug around really hard I could find the reason, but the more I read this book, the more I begin to appreciate the virtues of strep throat and how it's robbed me of my voice, energy, and comfort. The joys of being sick aside, Isla is now Grimm's wife, except she was already Grimm's wife since before the first book, and we're just now finding out about it. I get the feeling this was brought up in the last book, but this series is full of random stuff it's hard to care about, so we're going to focus on what's going on now. Grimm is from a long line of rulers who didn't take a wife, and he is reintroducing her to his court, a court which sees her as a traitor for fighting on the other side of the war for Lightlark that Nightshade was fighting to save themselves. It's an honest mistake to make. We get introduced to a bunch of characters that are of little consequence. We get a general who can control people by touching them, who hates Isla and sees her as a traitor. I had the vague hope this was going to lead to a villainous mastermind situation, but then I was reminded this is a Lightlark book, and this man of extreme power only exists so Isla can kill him and feed his head to snakes in a way that snakes couldn't possibly eat his head. We are also reintroduced to the blacksmith who no longer wants to kill Isla and use her blood to make weapons. Now he just wants Isla to kill him, because he's immortal and can't think of a way to use his stupidly overpowered ability to make items that can suppress power, generate more power, and can only be removed by himself and the people who put them on. There's other people too, but any named character in a Lightlark book only exists to make Isla either look better, feel better, or more powerful. Anyway, the powerful members of Grimm's court see Isla as a traitor, and when they express their displeasure at her once again being on the throne next to him, he threatens to cut out their tongues and worse. He assures his court that he has taken Isla so they can take Lightlark, something the others say they were close to winning anyway before Grimm called off the war after he got his wife back. Later, when he and Isla are alone, Grimm goes full simp and says that was all for show, that he intends to work with Isla and do whatever she wants because he loves her. And that's where I'll leave off the recap. This is only a short way into the quagmire that is this book, and I really don't want to pull too hard on the threads of an already confusing mess. Moving on to my dislikes. This is going to be the longest section because, of course it is. This is a Lightlark book and it reads like early 2000s fan fiction. At time of this review, it has over 2,000 ratings, and most of them are positive, so I can only assume these are the 2,000 fans who bought the book and used it to hold down paper, or prop up a table with a wobbly leg, or were in the woods when nature called and this was the closest thing to toilet paper at hand. Those pages must be soft and extra absorbent. Often I like to give books with this confusing of a plot a second read through, but since it made me appreciate the subtle joys of a highly contagious throat infection, I believe that would be trying too hard. First off, the story is a confusing mess, just like the last two books. Characters are introduced to appear in maybe 2 scenes. They're talked up like they're so big and powerful, only for them to either immediately submit to Isla's will, or be killed by her or someone with more screen time. Honestly, this reads like a bunch of things the author thought would sound cool, or would be a twist in a competently written story. But here just adds another kernel of corn to the septic tank. Again, the scene transitions are weak, so it's easy to go from one place to another with no indication of how we got there. Aster is getting better, but that's like saying the loud kid down the street practicing his trumpet finally learned what end to blow into. For the first half of the book, I did double back a lot when I felt lost. About halfway through I stopped caring and just let the mediocrity wash over me. Isla has a dragon now? Sure. She can control venomous snakes? Why not? The wildling elixir is dangerously limited again? Oh no. I stopped caring long ago. Now I'm going to do this on a first pass, and all the weird misunderstandings I take from it are going straight into the video. What I didn't misunderstand were the love scenes, which pop up with the organic and subtle nature of a bear on roller skates. This book quickly became a reverse harem story where Isla collects the most powerful men she can and sleeps with them. They're both completely fine with this because they have no self-respect. It's not like each rule an entire race of people and have lived thousands of years or anything like that. The problem with making everyone and everything really old is we lose a sense of scale. Honestly though, being that old and powerful should make these men less likely to care about Isla and her capricious nature that borders on psychopathy and crossed the line into abusive long ago. Not that these two are any less worthy of a straitjacket and removal from polite society. Both of these men are not only willing to throw their lives away on this trollop, but the lives of their people too, thanks to the contrived plot point that if the ruler dies, so do the people. This is a stupid plot point. It's also the reason for the plot hole in the last book about breaking the people away from their leaders, so a genocide doesn't happen every time the insane rulers decide to go play tag with a dragon. There's certainly no shortage of overpowered characters. It's just a shame they all have to share the same dying brain cell. Moving on. The powers are getting stupid. Early in this book, Isla has the blacksmith forge a pair of bracelets to suppress her power, because she gets tired of everything calling out to her, or something along those lines. This does absolutely nothing to hinder her. It would be like a person in our world who hates their legs, so they attach heavy ankle weights to them so they can't walk. Except this is Isla, so she just levitates off the ground and flies away at Mach 10. Despite what the book says, Isla isn't hindered by not having access to her powers. Yes, there are parts of the book where everyone is unpowered. Like when Isla needs to know the future, but the oracles are dead, so she must journey up a mountain to see the followers of a dead prophet who wrote a book on everything that was going to happen. Or when she finds the labyrinth that holds Grimm's ancestral father, and powers don't work here either because of a special metal. None of this depowering stops Isla from acquiring new powers. The author was apparently a big fan of Harry Potter because Isla can now command venomous snakes. She wears them like fashion accessories. She can also use Grimm's flare and teleport, I think. She also learns that she was born with too much power, and is the one who killed her parents when she was born, and her flare is actually the power to take the powers of anyone she kills, which gave her the blacksmith's power to make stuff. Then there's the scryers, and on and on and on. Also, she now has a big black dragon. I guess this is because the author didn't want to be outdone by Fourth Wing, an equally bad series but for different reasons. There's an anime I really don't like about a guy who resurrects as a goblin and retains the ability to gain the powers from whatever he eats. About halfway through the first season, he's already a world-ending threat, and yet he still keeps collecting more powers. That's what this series feels like. Isla is just collecting powers. There's no sense of danger or scale. There's no maturation of the powers from the first book, or inventive use of those powers. All threat is out the window because even when Isla does get hurt, she is immediately healed, or it's so soon after that the injury means nothing. There's also a recurring theme in the book that the wildling elixir, with unclear healing powers, is always limited, or being limited by an outside factor. But it's always conveniently there when Isla needs it, bringing up the question about its scarcity. Next, the big bad. We're getting into spoiler territory, but I don't care. The big bad of the book is Lark Crown, Isla's ancestral grandmother. She has the power to control people by draining them of their blood and turning them into puppets. So she's a vampire. She also wants to make Isla suffer for some ill-defined reason. If I remember correctly, Grimm's ancestral grandfather reawakens too, but I don't remember much else about him after the one scene, which shows how much impact that made. And by this point I was well into my checked out phase and simply didn't care. Back to Lark. I feel like Lark is what the guy who had the ability to control people by touching them was supposed to be. Then Aster went, "I don't want my big bad to be a guy," and so killed him off. Lark is sadistic, cruel, and the kind of stupid evil that would make Disney villains take a step back. I'm not quite sure why she hates Isla and wants to make her watch everyone she cares about die. Maybe she was forced to read the first 2 books. I'm not even sure why she's doing what she's doing other than she's immortal, she's evil, and she's powerful. Don't get me wrong, I can 100% get behind evil women in fantasy. I'm removing the next joke for tastelessness. But I need some reason to hate them or cheer for them. Lark is force of nature evil. She's evil because she's evil, and we have no idea the reason why. She is making an army of bloodless zombie soldiers that are trying to kill Isla, but it's bold of the author to assume the readers like the protagonist. Moving on. The storms. So a big plot point of this book is that Nightshade is being racked by apocalyptic storms. I don't mean apocalyptic as in they're just really bad. They rain monsters and shards of depowering metal. I realize that sounds awesome, and in the hands of a competent author it might be. Here they just kind of happen. The monsters are a mix of the monsters we've seen before and random abominations made of teeth, and more teeth. We're drifting close to cosmic horror stuff. Apparently these storms used to happen very infrequently. Now they're happening every year, and somehow no one else noticed. There are some pretty big things a government can keep secret. Storms that cover your lands and rain monsters and shards of metal are not one of them. I can promise that if that happened once anywhere on our planet, it would be the only topic of discussion everywhere in the world for the next year, and then it would be recorded and studied for centuries. This isn't something you can hide. Maybe if Nightshade was its own planet, that could work, but even still, it's doubtful. The storms are, if I remember correctly, the result of a second portal that's smaller than the one on Lightlark that they fought a war over in the last book, that using would somehow save the lives of Grimm, Isla, and all of Nightshade, but would also kill Oro. Don't ask me how, I have no idea. This series is a confusing mess. I remember when I was really young I played a game with friends where we'd make up the rules as we go. We'd add layer upon layer of complicated rules and scenarios until the game got boring, then nobody wanted to play anymore. Everything in this series is a quagmire, from what's going on to who's important to Isla's love life. Actually, that last one isn't complicated. She's just really easy and has no restraint or respect for the men she's involved with. I can't blame her, they don't respect themselves either. Back to the mess. This book doesn't have a story, it's just a bunch of stuff happening. I don't think the author even has an idea of where things are going. Isla's stacking up powers as fast as named unimportant characters are dropping dead. Isla is hostile with her boy toys before falling in love with them again 5 minutes later. The chemistry between the three is about as interesting as a sink full of dirty dishes. The love scenes are jarring and fit to the story with the subtlety of a skinny guy trying to smuggle a 20-pound ham in his sweatpants. The powers are on the same level as kids play fighting with their everything-proof shields. Finally, not really finally, but I'm tired of listing things, the story has no cohesion. Isla just jumps from one thing to the next. There's no moment where all the stuff she's been working towards is useful. There's no revelation, no real climax. Everything is just pulled out of the author's backside. It doesn't even feel like it's building to anything. I'm 3 books into this series and honestly, I've given up. I tried making sense of this, looking for a deeper story or something that can make the whole thing interesting. It's just a swirl of elements that on their own and fully explored could have made for an interesting story. What we have here is like if you took all the condiments and spices in your kitchen, mixed them into a swill, and served that for dinner. It's just an off-putting mess and no one wants to help clean it up. I feel sorry for the editor. I'm not sure what they're getting paid, but it's not enough. Moving on to my likes. Unlike my review of Lightlark, I won't leave this part blank. First off, it's shorter. Granted, it's only shorter by about an hour, but less condiment Sunday is a positive in my book. It doesn't feel shorter. It's a bad sign when you keep checking how much is left and you find your mind wandering to more pleasant things, like how your mouth tastes of metal when you're sick, or how getting winded from going up 6 steps and getting dizzy and almost passing out on the concrete sounds like a much better time. Or maybe I would have been more comfortable outside in the sub-freezing weather because I'd be farther away from this book. I'm already gaining mental distance from it now. Alright, I'll actually say something nice about the book, and not just a dislike thinly disguised as a like. I like that the villain is actually evil. She's stupid evil in that I couldn't figure out why she was doing what she was doing, other than she's evil. I think it was because she was trapped long ago, and now that she's free, she's going to make it the world's problem. I too have had regretful hangovers. That doesn't answer why she's evil, just why she's still alive. Kind of. Like I said, I stopped caring. Had Lark been brought out earlier and had more personality than a used tissue, and maybe been a bit treacherous, she might have been worth paying attention to. The problem is, she's not. Moving on to my thoughts. I'm going to apologize to you guys here. Honestly, I should have put more work into this book. I read the last 2 twice so I could more accurately break them down. I didn't do that here. Okay, I'm not actually sorry. This book was terrible and I was sick. I was in enough pain and I didn't need any more. I was recommended a book on trauma and the people who live with it and how they cope. I've been told it can be a pretty tough read, and some of the stories in it are heartbreaking. I'd like to thank Skyshade for making that look like a good time filled with happy memories. Next, this book is aggressively mediocre. It's not so bad that I'll hate it till my dying breath like a handbook for mortals. It's not the endless exposition dump of Shadow of the Conqueror. It's not even the mundane boredom of a printer manual. This is someone's high school fanfiction mediocre. This is that embarrassing thing most of us grew out of and try to distance ourselves from. I've heard this called Avatar: The Last Airbender fanfiction, and that's fairly accurate. But really, this is everything fanfiction. This is every story the author has read, watched, or played, crammed into a package groaning at the seams. The box distended and greasy from the 20 pounds of mess crammed into a box that would struggle to hold 5. That said, there is something I've taken from this, learning what I don't want to do. When I started writing, as with many people, I read the words, "An author must read." I've seen things I don't want to do, some of which I've already been guilty of, and looking at the same mistakes in other works gives me the impression of what I don't want to put in my own. Some lessons we learn the hard way. Some we learn from someone else going, "Hey guys, watch this." Good luck, everyone.